Good afternoon, everybody. It is Super Bowl Sunday, and we are hours away from kickoff. But I wanted to wear my Eagles hat one last time as we head into a new champion for 2026. But today we will be going over one of the benchmarks for the first quarter, and that is a new thing that you'll be learning about called PEG report cards. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, what we do with these report cards is we report on something new called the model. So you've heard of Top Gun, you've heard of trying to achieve Top Gun, and we always get the phone calls, why didn't I get Top Gun? What's going on with my business? And there's not necessarily anything going wrong with your business. Top Gun is specifically focused right now, as of last year, on top EBITDA performances in our network. What we're going to be doing in the future years, meaning this year and forward, we are going to be looking at what your model is and compare you to your model. And based on that, you can get a Top Gun recognition for top quartile. So what is the model for my industry? So we're going to use equipment rental as an example. So we'll have one for a vet rental that will be separate. In this case, when we look at your rental income minus your rental costs, we hope that you can achieve 87%. That would be considered model in the industry. We also have a couple other items there. You can see equipment sales, which I would consider serial items with serial numbers on them. So that would be more like earth moving equipment, aerial, stuff like that. Again, the model would say, obviously 10%, but we are going to actually put 20% on there because we do have smaller items in our network for equipment sales. We also have supply sales, which would be your retail and any other supplies outside of just renting equipment. And that margin has been, top quartile has been right around 40%. So we'll be using that as the model. And then you see that part sales, again, not many part sales going on in rental business, but we set that at 20%, and then service sales, if you were doing outside service, is set at 30%. Again, looks like a dealership, but really what we're finding is that most rental operations have other profit centers other than rental. Okay, so when we look at, what your business, we want to get to sales minus costs. You just saw me run through the gross profit or gross margin for each of those profit centers. Now, if you combine them all together, what does that equal? Well, you have to look at your sales mix first. So we're going to look at when you sell something, you have $1 million in sales. How many dollars of those $1 million come from rental versus equipment, so forth. So here we have an example of company number one where they have 80% of everything they sell is rental income. And then when you go down through the line, about 6% of what they sell is serialized equipment, 10% would be retail or supplies, and then just 2% in service and parts, maybe even 0, right? So that would be an example. Now we are looking at company number two, totally different company. You may have one of these companies sitting next to you in your peer group. 60% of their revenue comes from rental, 25% would come from equipment sales, and only 3% would come from retail or supplies, and then 8% might come from parts, 4% might come from service. So totally different type of business, but yet still want to look at your book and look at side-by-side comparison, and it becomes really difficult. So modeling is going to help us get away from that. So when you look at the pie chart, and you hear me talk about this over the years about pie charts and big circles, and think of your pie chart of what you're selling, and that's really what you're seeing here. Two totally different types of companies, and they're different of sales mixes, and we're going to apply the gross profit goals to that. So here we have the first company. Actually both companies are, no, this is the first company. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the percentage of sales, the pie chart, and we're going to look at those gross margin goals, and we're going to multiply those pieces together. So when you multiply the percent of sales of rental on rental and the gross profit goal on rental, you're going to get your overall what is called a contribution to your overall gross margin or your gross profit. And so in this case, you see that you take the 80 and you multiply it by 87, and it gets you 69.6%. And that will be contributed to your overall gross profit goal, which you can see as you add it up here is 75.8. So looks like a very traditional rental operation, 75, 76% gross profit overall. And so let's just compare it to the next company. So you can see on this company, when you drop down rental sales as a percentage of total sales, that's where the high margin is, right? So you're giving away quite a bit in your gross profit margin. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad strategy. You may enjoy sales of equipment. You may grow your business significantly, 100%, 200%. You know, we have plenty of people doing 20 million in rental and 20 million in equipment sales, and it doesn't feel as harsh as a $40 million rental operation, right? So there's different ways that people want to achieve the same overall gross profit dollar goal. But you can see that the contribution of 60 times 87, or the percent of sales of 60 times 87 as a model, gets you 52.2 contribution towards your overall, which is 61.2. So when you look at these together, you're really looking at two different companies with totally different benchmarks, different goals, and I would say different Top Gun aspirations. So 75 versus 61. We then want to look at the expense side of the income statement, and you'll note that I'm not going to change that based on who you are. So in the case of, this is your fixed and semi-fixed, we are going to look at what is the overall network expectation. In this case, this type of business, 28% is personnel as a percentage of revenue. Occupancy is 7%. That includes rent, buildings, so forth, so on. Again, our network happens to be very large, so you may have 11% on occupancy, but because we have large members inside the network, that drives up that percentage. Now, will we ever model the expense side based on different types of companies? Yes, we probably will, but for right now, this is what we're leaving in. And then on the operating side, you have 8%, which includes all the other expenses, marketing, education, professional expenses, admin, so forth. So it gives you some benchmarks. So when you take those gross profits or gross margins in each of those companies and you subtract out the expenses, 43%, when you add them up, from that number, you get an EBITDA model. So in the case of, like we are always talking, what's a good EBITDA to get? Well, it depends on what you're selling, really. So you can see in the one case, that person's going to be striving towards a 33% EBITDA, which would mean that they've achieved their model. And in the other case, if they hit 18% EBITDA, they will have achieved their model. The best they can do, best in their quartile, right? Top quartile. So it just gives you an idea of how different we all are inside the same network. Now, you might say, well, that's really cool, Dan. So what? Like, I don't want to deal with this, too much analysis. Well, we've gone ahead and we've created structured for you to get yourself a model from us, and it starts with a couple pieces. So I'm going to walk you through that. This is it first. This is the PEG member model financial report card. And you'll see here different pieces to a spreadsheet. In this case, we have a model income statement, target results, which is your top area. And that's really where we establish the model, what the goals are that you want to achieve. And based on your revenue and your mix, what can you do? And so in this case, you see the number 39.1% in the bottom right-hand corner. And that's really kind of your model. income statement results based on your revenue and your mix of sales. So now when you come down to the actual income statement that you might have and we apply it in there, we're going to apply the different expense categories and we're going to apply the different gross profit margins, and it's going to come up with what your goal is. And so we'll have your actual underneath your model, and then on the bottom of the page you're going to end up seeing a kind of variance. So you're going to see, like, here's my goal, here's what I did, here's the variance, and you can kind of see we then summarize it and we make a comment here. Not everyone is made equal to hit a PEG benchmark. Both gross profit and EBITDA dollars and percentages are determined by your sales mix. And so this just talks about the model in detail. And then the bottom box says, based on mix of sales at your business, for you to reach your PEG goal, you would need to have a gross profit of 82 and you would need to have an EBITDA of 39. So this person's heavy in rental and he needs to get the 39% EBITDA. In this particular case, he crushed it. He happens to be one of our highest level Top Gun performers. And so this is his 2024 data put into the model. And he's 32% better than what we expected, even going after top model numbers. So you might say, that's a lot of numbers. I don't like that. We thought you might say that. So we created an additional report. This report comes with you standard with everybody that requests it. It's a performance benchmark report, and here you get an executive summary. You get your just what we went through, the whole rental mix, and then we go through the overhead structure. How did you do versus the model, and the assessment, whether you met the goal, whether you're above the model or you're in the elite area. We then go through and give you 3 bullet points on your key strengths, and then give you kind of 3 risks that you should consider and constraints. And then at the end, we give you about anywhere from 3 to 4, I've seen in the reports that come out, action items for you to work on. And overall, we give you a performance rating. And for those that are elite operators, they'll be recognized as Top Gun next year. So this is a benefit for you. And the first quarter benefits are about financial and valuation. So this is something available to you on request. It may become standard next year, but right now it's in beta stage, so it's on request only. So certainly reach out to me and I will be glad to hook you up. Contact me with any of your other financial analysis needs, and have a great Super Bowl today. Go Birds.